My name is Jack Harper, and it all started with a ticket I had no intention of buying. Funny, right? My entire life turned upside down not because of a decision, but because of an impulse, as if someone nudged me in the back and said, "Play the game, Jack. What do you have to lose?" Until that moment, my life had been as predictable as a microwave oven manual. I worked at a car dealership in Reno, sold used cars, ate frozen dinners, and watched old action movies in the evenings. Sometimes I'd meet up with friends on weekends, but more often I'd just sit by the window, listening to the couple arguing in the apartment next door. I was 29, and I felt like everything had already been decided, and most importantly, not by me. That day, I was driving home from work, tired and hungry, and saw an ad. Las Vegas, City of Luck, 3-hour drive to a new light, 3 hours until a new light. A simple phrase, but it caught my attention. 20 minutes later, I was throwing my bag in the trunk, pouring coffee into a thermos, and driving down the highway toward Vegas. For what purpose? I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to see if luck really existed. Night fell over the desert like a velvet curtain. When the first lights of Las Vegas appeared ahead, something inside me clicked, as if I'd crossed the line between a dull existence and something alive. Everything here exuded energy. The neon, the hum of the cars, the bright faces, the music from the bars. Even the air seemed charged with electricity. I checked into the Golden Mirage, not the most expensive casino, but one with soul. A girl with sleek black hair and amber eyes spoke to the receptionist. Her name tag said Sophie. When she looked at me and smiled, for the first time in a long time, I felt my heart beat faster. "First time in Vegas?" she asked. "Yes." I decided to try my luck. "Be careful." Her smile turned enigmatic. "Luck doesn't favor the overconfident here." These words stuck in my head, but I brushed them aside. I thought I had everything under control. The casino smelled of expensive cigars, alcohol, and nerves. I exchanged my savings $5,000 for chips and sat down at the blackjack table. I'd never really played, but I knew the numbers. Next to me sat a man of about 40 in a suit and a girl in a sparkling champagne-colored dress. Her laugh was light, clinking like glasses at a party. I noticed the dealer glance at me, as if assessing a newcomer. "First deal 21. I won. Second deal 21 again. Third deal 20. Win." The chips started to pile up in front of me, and somewhere between the fourth and fifth hand, I caught myself smiling. When I got up from the table, I had almost $40,000. 40,000. In 2 hours, Sophie saw me at the bar. "So, newbie?" Her voice was soft, warm, like a silk scarf wrapped comfortably in the cold. "I think I caught my luck by the tail." She laughed. "Careful, Jack. Sometimes it bites." We went outside. A night in Vegas is never dark, only colorful. Fountains, lights, limousines, laughter, music. Sophie offered to show me the city for real. We got into a taxi and drove to the outskirts where there were no tourists, where Vegas became almost real. Small bars, old neon signs, the smell of dust and jazz. At the Lucky Cat, she ordered a whiskey and Coke. I ordered a straight bourbon. "You're not the kind of person who just wandered in here," she said, looking at me through her glass. "You look like you're running." I chuckled. "Maybe I'm running towards something, or away from someone." We were silent. Music filled the pause. The saxophone sounded like a confession. Sophie leaned slightly toward me. Her hair smelled of jasmine and smoke. "Careful, Jack. In this city, everything that glitters is worth more than it seems." "And you?" I asked. "How much are you worth?" She smiled. "I'm not selling out. I'm just reminding gamblers that life is a bet, too." I returned to the casino around midnight, already a little drunk and agitated. Everything inside me screamed, "Play again." I sat down at the table again, this time on roulette. The spinning ball, the sound of metal, the breathing of the room, it was all hypnotic. I bet and won. I bet again and won. Each time more and more daringly. By morning, I had $300,000. I booked a suite, ordered champagne, and sat by the window, watching the sunrise over the city that never sleeps. Sophie arrived just as the sun was rising. "You really don't listen to warnings, do you?" she said, taking off her shoes and coming closer. "Why should you if luck is on my side?" "Because she's capricious. She kisses you today and spits in your face tomorrow." She came very close. For a second, everything around me disappeared: the neon, the chips, the casino, the whirl. All that remained were her eyes and my reflection in them. "Then let him kiss me some more." I whispered. This night was the beginning. I thought it was a new life. In reality, it was the end. After that night, everything seemed to change. When I woke up in my suite, it wasn't the alcohol that was ringing in my head, it was the feeling of power. I lay on snow-white sheets, still lingering with the scent of her perfume, and thought, anything is possible. 300,000 in one day. Some people had never seen that kind of money in their entire lives, and I simply turned the wheel and arrived in the city of light. Sophie left a note on the nightstand. Don't play too long, darling. Luck gets jealous. I chuckled. Jealous luck is a beautiful metaphor, but back then, I didn't yet understand that it was a warning. I went down to the casino, no longer wearing an old shirt but a fresh suit I'd bought that morning. The people around me seemed different. They looked at me with respect. The croupiers smiled, the waitresses called me by name. Jack Harper, the new star of the Golden Mirage. I sat down at the table again, but this time the feeling was different. Not excitement, confidence. I wasn't just playing, I was controlling fate. The first bets came easily. 21. 20 win. I sipped whiskey, laughed, and tossed chips with a slight casualness. A couple of hours later, Sophie appeared next to me. She was wearing a black dress with a low back, and a thin chain sparkled against her skin as she sat down next to me. You haven't slept, have you? She smiled. Why sleep when you can win? Because sometimes sleep is the only chance to save yourself. I ignored her. When she took my hand, I felt a tremor, whether from passion or adrenaline. By midnight, I was on top. $1 million. Unreal, impossible, but real. Sophie watched me play, her eyes fixed on me. You know this is all a dream, right? She said quietly. Then don't wake me. She kissed me right there at the table. The players laughed, someone whistled, but all I heard was the pounding of my temples. At that moment, I believed that luck was her. We went outside. Vegas was ablaze with neon, and inside I was shaking with happiness and fear. You know, Sophie said, you're different. Different? Most people come here to forget. And you come here to prove something to yourself. I remained silent. Maybe she was right. I always felt like a gray shadow in the office, in life, in the mirror. And here I was someone. She ran her hand over my face. Don't forget, Jack, this city doesn't like debtors. Even if all you owe is luck. The next morning, I decided to up the ante. There was no longer any fear inside, only image. I wanted more. I exchanged $1 million for chips and went to the baccarat table. Everything happened like a dream. Cards, laughter, screams, flashes of light. First I won, then nothing, then a loss. 1, 2, 3. Sweat on my palms. My heart speeds up. I bet more to win back. Then even more. Then nothing. When the ball landed where my last chips were, I felt nothing. Emptiness. Silence. Only the roar of my blood. The scoreboard flashed red. I was empty. Sophie approached slowly. I warned you. It's not over yet. You want to do what every gambler does when they lose everything. What? Sell what's left of yourself. I didn't understand. Or didn't want to. That night we sat at the bar. I was shattered but not broken. Sophie was silent. Then she said, you know, Jack, luck doesn't like being forced. Sometimes you just have to leave before it hates you. I looked at her. Will you leave? If I stay, you'll start playing again. I didn't answer. When she left, I returned to the roulette wheel. There stood a woman with short blonde hair, laughing as if the world belonged to her. Try again, she said, because now you know what it feels like to lose. I bet the rest 5,000 and won. For a second, I thought Sophie was wrong, that I could get it all back. But with every spin of the ball, I felt myself disappearing. When a person falls, they don't immediately notice. At first, it seems like they've simply tripped, then like they've stumbled. And only when you're already plummeting do you realize the fall began long ago. I was sitting in a cheap motel off the strip. An empty bottle of bourbon sat on the nightstand next to a stack of receipts, crumpled and worthless. The remainder of my millions, $83. And outside the window, the same Vegas blindingly bright, like a mockery. Sophie had disappeared 3 days ago, without a word, without a trace. She left only that same note I'd read once before. Don't play too long, darling. Luck gets jealous. Now I realized she wasn't talking about the casino. I wandered the city at night like a ghost. Wherever I went, I saw reflections of my mistakes. People laughed, gambled, won. Everyone had that look on their faces that marks the beginning of the end. I walked into an old cafe on the corner of Flamingo and Sands. Behind the counter stood a woman with a tired face and eyes that had seen too much. "Coffee?" she asked. "Coffee, and maybe a tip," I said. She chuckled. "Tips are worth more than coffee in Vegas." I told her anyway. About Sophie, about winning, about losing, about feeling like someone had taken my life and turned it upside down. She listened silently, then said, "Luck isn't a woman, man. It's a mirror. It just shows you who you are." I looked out the window and for the first time realized how tired I was. Later that night, I returned to the Golden Mirage. Not to play, just to watch. Everything seemed the same, the lights, the music, the clink of chips. But now I saw everything differently, faces full of greed, hands trembling over the bets. People here weren't winning, they were just postponing their losses. I noticed Sophie at the bar. She was standing, talking to the same man who'd been with her that first night. Tall, confident, with a watch that cost more than my car. They were laughing. She noticed me. For a second, there was silence between us. I approached. "You know, I thought you'd disappeared." "I'm not disappearing. I'm just changing tables." I wanted to say a lot about the pain, about how I felt when it was gone. But she looked at me as if I were back to being the guy who'd arrived with 5,000 in my pocket. "Jack," she said softly, "I warned you. This city takes everything, even feelings." I wanted to grab her hand, but she retreated. "Don't play anymore. Leave while you can." I returned to the roulette wheel, not for the money, for proof. I wanted to convince myself that I still could, that the world wasn't as cruel as it seemed. I bet my last $80, red. The ball spun. My heart followed suit. Falling, black, laughter, someone's scream, music, and inside, emptiness. I went outside. The wind smelled of dust and despair. I walked, not knowing where I was going. Neon, faces, lights all before my eyes. Everything was blurry. A homeless man sat on the sidewalk with a sign. "Need a little luck." I stopped. I took out my wallet. Empty. Just a business card. It read, "Sophie, Golden Mirage VIP Services." I tore it up and threw it in the trash. But something stirred inside, a strange feeling. Not anger, not pain, freedom. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could walk away. Not a loser, just a man who understood the value of luck. By the time I reached the city limits, the sun was already rising. Las Vegas shone behind me like a mirage. I sat down on the side of the road, took off my shoes, and laughed. Just like that. For no reason. Because I finally understood. Luck really is jealous. It leaves when you start loving it more than life itself. The road out of Vegas stretched on forever. The asphalt melted in the sun, the air trembled as if the whole world had become a mirage. I drove without a destination, just away. The radio was silent, and voices swirled in my head, laughter, the clink of chips. Sophie's words, "Don't gamble too much." I didn't know where I was going. Maybe home, maybe just somewhere free of money and deception. Ahead, the desert. Behind, a city that takes souls and makes promises in their place. When I was almost out of gas, I pulled into the Old Blue Cactus Motel. The sign swayed in the wind, half the lights went out. I rented a room and slept without alcohol for the first time in days. I woke up to a knock. A man in a light suit stood at the door. Not a cop, not a gambler. Something in between. "Jack Harper?" "Yes. I'm from the Golden Mirage. My name is Dan. Miss Sophia asked me to give this to you." He handed over an envelope. Inside was a photo of me and Sophie at the bar, and a short note. "Some winnings can't be measured in money. Take care." No address, no signature. Just the scent of her perfume on the paper. I spent a week in a motel. I worked at a gas station, fixed cars, and kept quiet. No one knew who I was in Vegas, and for the first time it felt good. Life became simple again. Coffee in the morning, heat during the day, stars at night. But sometimes when a client in an expensive suit walked in or a car with casino lights drove by, something inside me clicked. Desire, adrenaline, excitement. One evening, I noticed a playing card on the table. The Ace of Hearts. I clearly remembered not having brought it here. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it was a reminder. I picked up the card, looked at it, and put it back. "No," I said out loud. "Not today." A month later, I'd saved up some money and decided to move on to Los Angeles Angeles. There, no one cares who you are. A city where you can start over. Before leaving, I stopped at the cafe where Mia, the girl I sometimes chatted with, worked. Leaving? She asked. Yes. So, what are you going to do? I don't know. Just not gamble. She smiled. Good plan. But, Jack, you're still a gambler. It's just that the stakes are different now. These words stuck in my head. A gambler, but not with cards. With fate. In Los Angeles, I rented a room and got a job at an auto repair shop. Life flowed smoothly again. I stopped counting the days. Sometimes, when the radio played music from the bar where Sophie and I sat that first night, I closed my eyes. It didn't hurt, just quiet. I realized Vegas hadn't disappeared, it lived inside, like a scar. But now that scar didn't bother me. It reminded me of who I was. One evening, walking home from work, I saw a girl on the side of the road trying to start her car. Need help? I asked. She looked up. Green, attentive. That would be great. I fixed the engine and started it. Thanks, she said. I'm Emma, Jack. She smiled. You look like someone who knows the value of luck. I laughed. Believe me, I know. Emma and I started seeing each other more often. Coffee, walks, conversations. She wasn't the type to ask about the past. She was interested in the present. And one day, as we sat by the ocean, I realized, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like gambling. In that moment, I felt like I'd won. Without cards, without chips, without bets. That night, I dreamed of Vegas. Sophie was standing at the table, in that same black dress. You finally get it, right? She said. What? That luck isn't something that comes. It's what remains when everything else is gone. I woke up. The same card was lying on the nightstand, the ace of hearts. I smiled. Thank you, Sophie. Time works strangely. Sometimes it stretches like a deserted road, and sometimes it shocks you, transporting you back in time in a single instant. 2 years passed. I was still living in Los Angeles, in a small apartment above a car repair shop. Ever since I met Emma, life had become real. Without the flashes of neon, without the rustle of chips, without the fear of losing everything. We weren't rich, but every morning I woke up next to her, and that was more than winning. Sometimes, when a tour bus with a Vegas awaits sign passed by, I simply smiled. Let him wait for someone else. That evening, I returned home later than usual. There was a letter on the table, a paper one without a return address. On the envelope was a woman's neat handwriting. I recognized it immediately. Jack, if you still remember where we first met, come tomorrow night. I need to say goodbye properly, S. I sat for a long time, staring at the lines. There was no anger or fear inside. Only a slight curiosity, like that of a person who already knows the answer won't change anything, but still wants to hear it. The next evening, I was in Vegas. The city greeted me with the same scent: smoke, alcohol, electricity, and promises. But now I was different. The neon didn't catch my heart didn't beat faster. I just walked. The golden mirage had hardly changed. The dealer, the noise, the clink of chips, everything was the same, only now like an old movie in which I once played the lead. She was waiting at the bar. Sophie. The same posture, the same look, only her eyes were a little softer and her smile calmer. Jack Harper, she said as I approached. You finally came. You invited me. I knew you couldn't resist. I laughed. I'm not a gambler anymore. Really? She raised her glass. Then you're the only person in this town who's ever managed it. We were silent. The music from the hall mingled with the hum of conversation. Sophie looked less like a goddess of fortune than a woman tired of playing roles. Why did you call me? I asked. To repay a debt. She took a small case from her purse and opened it. Inside was a playing card, the ace of hearts. You left this with me the night you lost everything. I looked at the card. I thought it found me on its own. Perhaps it did, she said, but it's yours now. We went outside. The evening was warm, the neon reflected in her eyes. You've changed, I said. I just stopped playing other people's roles. Now I choose who I sit with at the table. She looked at me for a long moment. Have you found your happiness? Yes. Then hold on to it, and never try to gamble it. We stood in silence until the wind blew a paper cup off the sidewalk and into the darkness. Sophie extended her hand. Goodbye, Jack. I shook her hand. It was warm, alive. And suddenly I realized Everything between us was a game, but not for the sake of winning, for the sake of one of us finally understanding the rules. I walked away without looking back. With every step, the noise of Vegas faded. In the parking lot, I got into my car and pulled out the ace of hearts. I placed it on the dashboard. "Last bet," I said quietly, and I won it. The engine started. The headlights reflected in the rearview mirror. The city behind me still flickered as if winking goodbye. I pulled out onto the highway. Ahead lay the night, the road, and the feeling that luck was now not outside but within. Because maybe true luck is simply knowing when to leave the table.